we don't know how long we're going to get. None of us, right? And so if you think that someday down the road, tomorrow, next week, after your 40th, in 5 years, 1 year, after you get the promotion, the job, you make the money, that somehow that's going to be the catalytic moment that you're going to be that person that you say you're going to be, it's never going to happen. And you're making excuses and you're actually wasting time. You're not only wasting your time, but you're wasting precious time that you could be stewarding other people to their own success and greatness and being the example for others. You're wasting their time. And if you're wasting your time, you're wasting their time, you're actually killing people, because the butterfly effect of you being the example that is so needed means that you get to intercept people as they need you. And so if you don't do it right now, people are dying, and that suicide rates are through the roof. Think about the depression, anxiety, frustration, irritation, the broken homes. How many kids are growing up without fathers, models, mentors? How many young girls are going through their own abuse, physical, mental, emotional, or sexual, simply because one person didn't decide to step in the gap and be the change? And so be the change and do it right now. Do it right now and do it vigilantly and do it for the rest of your life. You do that consistently every single day. You go to bed exhausted every single night because you gave all you had in your faith, your fitness, your family, your finances. You go live that way. Heaven is there. That's fulfillment. That's real fulfillment. And you live anywhere less than that, and that's hell. You have this aching knowing that you didn't do enough because you chose not to do enough.
It gives me great pleasure knowing that you choose to listen to this episode on the John Gardina Classroom. My mission is to serve the Lord by creating content that will help you in your journey of life. If you want one-on-one coaching or would like to be part of my 40 Days of Deliverance program, please visit my website at johngardina.com. Also, if you would like to give a financial gift to help the show grow or provide the funds for the editing process and publishing of the show, it would truly be appreciated. Lastly, God has given me a vision to have a place in the woods with cabins to enjoy fellowship, healing, along with outdoor activities with others. If you have land and feel compelled by the Lord to donate some to make this vision a reality, please email me. I will have all the information available in the show notes. Thank you, and enjoy this episode. Welcome, everyone, to the John Gardina Classroom. I have a very special guest today. He resides in Texas, and his name is Erin Alejandrino. He is known as the Fit Beard on social media. And Erin, I just want to say it's a blessing to have you on today, and that you're going to share your story and your message of how your story is helping other men. So thank you so much for being on today, brother.
Yeah, man. Grateful to be on, and looking forward to the conversation we're going to have.
Yeah. So just going back from the beginning of your life, I talk about how your family dynamics wasn't very traditional, and that kind of molded you to the individual that you were growing up.
Sure. I'd say it's non-traditional, but it's a lot more common than I think a lot of people will really care to admit. Is I was raised by a single mom without a strong father figure in the household. My mom's been married and divorced twice, and I'm an only child. And so the majority of my upbringing was really kind of figure it out, and not a good blueprint for masculinity. My mom did a great job, but she was really let down by the father figures, by the men that she brought into her life. So I was exposed early on to physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse. Second father figure was a drug addict, died with a needle in his arm. First one, deadbeat, didn't pay child support, so put a lot of burden and stress on my mom. And then when she remarried, he was just a very passive aggressive man, had a lot of anger issues, lying, cheating, and had relationships through the majority of the marriage. And so just a whole lot of not right ways to live. And, the model for it, that it shows a young man, because all masculinity is essentially modeled. And so I took on a lot of those behaviors for a lot of the years. And so I think the biggest shift was over the last 10, 12 years, where I realized that if I didn't do better, I would probably end up doing a whole lot worse and perpetrating even worse things to my kids. And so the shift has been just a consistent pouring into a personal development so that I can become really what God has set out for me to be, and knowing full well that we are given our misery so that it can become our ministry, and we can really help other people work through the same struggles and suffering that we walked through. So it's been a journey.
No, that's great, man. I mean, I think anyone who is in your situation or similar, feeling isolated, don't have a male role model to look up to, and then you don't know except for what you see. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the behavior you take on as an individual. So the great thing is, the word I love to use is transformation. And you learn that I needed to change and not be like these men that you saw in your life. So when was it, through high school or after high school, did your kind of career start in fitness?
Yeah, man. I'd say fitness has been kind of the backbone for most of my life. The one blessing that my mom did is she probably knew inherently that I had to be active doing something. So she put me in martial arts when I was pretty young, and that stayed pretty consistent. So I always had some type of physical something that I was doing through grade school and adolescence and high school. So that stayed with me. It didn't turn into a career choice and a passion until late 20s. And it was, I was bartending at the time. I was bartending up in Scottsdale, and I got approached by a gym owner, and he said, man, I don't know if you'd be interested, but you got the look. And him and I had a relationship. He says, I know that you've got some previous martial arts background. I'm looking for a boxing coach. And so that was really my start over the last 10 years to start getting back into coaching and teaching. Taught a couple of classes, and just I felt the golden thread is what I call it. The golden thread is that moment when your talents, your treasures line up with the gifts that God has for you. And I remember helping a client, and she was flat-footed. She didn't know how to punch, and she just couldn't get the mechanics down. And I helped her really connect like a really good right cross on the pads. And it was like this instant moment where both her and I just had this like a golden thread, a beautiful moment where like, this is what I'm designed to do. I'm meant to help people get breakthroughs. And it started with fitness. And so it was in that moment that I started to pull on that golden thread and realize, man, I'm a coach. Like, I'm meant to be a coach. I'm meant to be a teacher. And it was from there for the last 10 years, I've just been doubling down on that. But fitness has been the backbone of it, because I believe very strongly that for men, we learn all of our lessons through physicality. Mm-hmm. We have to learn it the hard way. And so it takes something physical for us to really get the breakthroughs mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so fitness for me has been my gateway to personal development, to tap into the other areas of greatness, other areas of success. But it all begins with the body.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I played college baseball, and I went through a period of lack of fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me.
Yeah, that'll wake you up.
So it woke me up, man.
Yeah.
And what happened from there was I was just on a mission, and I learned, just like you said, and I think everyone has to learn this who's listening, is you have to go through that physical suffering for the spirit to be awoken to like your mission. Mm-hmm. And once you learn that, and you go through that adversity of hell, you have to. And then once you understand that, then you could actually go on and say, look, I can help you now because I understand where my spiritual connection resides.
Yeah. Bingo.
So, it's a beautiful thing. That I've learned that too, Erin, is that it's so important to the physicality part for men to connect with themselves spiritually, mentally, and with brothers too, to grow in with one another. So the part that I love this, can you expand a little bit on the golden thread? I love that phrase, by the way.
Yeah, I think that, when we're trying to find our purpose, John, there's so many things that say, you need to fulfill your life's purpose. And I believe we all have a design. God has given us a unique mission on this earth. Every single one of us has got something unique that only we can do. We're the Mozart in our very specific area or industry once we unlock it. And it begins as a golden thread. We'll often be very tapped into it through childhood, but oftentimes, if you didn't raise yourself in a household, or if you weren't raised in a household where you had parents that were really paying attention to that, they weren't pouring into you, or they were absent, or you were raised by a single mom that was just surviving, you don't get to have the same opportunity. So you have to kind of figure it out on your own, or you end up spending most of your life just wasting your talent and your treasure. And so the golden thread shows up, though, when things are really easy, it's in alignment, and you seem to could do it with absolute ease, and other people can't do it as well as you. And so when you tap in those areas, those are like the little flickers that God is saying, hey, this is the path you need to pull on. And I believe if you start weaving those golden threads with intentionality, with design, you start living a very purposeful life. And so for me, they showed up in areas of coaching, teaching, learning information, be able to reteach that information, make it attainable for my clients, we'll get them to get their own breakthroughs, but basically turning my life lessons into curriculum so I can help other people through it.
Yeah, that's solid. And I've never heard that way before, the golden thread. And just to recap, I mean, it's almost like a state of flow. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yep.
So I've been there before, whether it's through running, writing, coaching, teaching, is that where you just feel like everything's just going smooth and you feel like you're right, easy. I like that word easy in the sense that it's natural, right? That's a talent that you've been given by God. And once you find that calling, then you know your purpose of what to do. And then you got to go on mission and how you can serve others. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the thread gets thicker the more that you use it, right? And so some people will find it, the guys that peaked in high school and they never did anything else after that. Well, they stop pulling on those talents and treasure and developing those. And so, yeah, the thread gets thicker and it becomes your life, your life work, really, if you really recognize the moments when in time stops, because that's really what you're designed to do.
Yeah. So make the connection now that you helped this lady land that punch and you're like, man, I'm a good teacher. I got the physical background. You started your own business and then go from your business to where you connected with Bedros.
Yes, that was from that punch, Carol Rogers, Almond's Own Fitness, boxing coach, bartending, that transition from, a unpurposed life to a much more purposeful life. It's about 12 years. From there, I just kept pulling on that thread. So I kept finding the moments that were really drawing me, and it all was related to fitness, coaching, teaching. From there, was a group fitness instructor, and then broke off on my own, started my own personal training business. I partnered at the time with a gal. We ran a company in Scottsdale called Beauty and the Beard Fitness. We did group fitness instructions. That's where the fit beard came. And then we got a gym, ran the gym for about 4 years. That was probably my biggest entrepreneurial venture to date, the first one, or the first big one. And so we ran a gym facility. We had a dozen trainers work for us. At that time, then I was really realizing that I could have a greater impact through social and social media. And so we were doing some in-person training, but I also saw an opportunity for this online coaching space. And so this was probably about 8 years ago. And I was just paying attention to some of the coaches, the influencers, the online course creators at the time. It was a very different market 8 years ago. And I started investing heavily in personal development. So I remember getting a couple coaches back then just to help me with mindset and business, different applications inside the business. And I came across a handful of accounts that I really resonated with their messages and stories, Bedros Keuilian being one of them. Him and I have a very similar upbringing. We both experienced physical, mental, emotional, and sexual abuse growing up. And I appreciated how he could talk about it so openly, honestly, be very vulnerable and just open about pain. And I saw it as really a great way to be able to connect with people that were also struggling with that. And so through just the social world, I got an opportunity to partner with him in a business to help launch a supplement company. So left my business in Arizona, closed that down, took the ride on the rocket ship about 5.5 years ago, and helped him launch a supplement company. Through the supplement company launch, we developed a friendship, and we were talking about our own upbringing, the personal development experiences we have gone through. And we were both just like, man, the world needs more men that do deep work and are willing to talk about it. And so we literally whiteboarded an idea of the project, which is a 75-hour personal development experience for men. And we ran that together for about 3.5 years. I just stepped out recently in this last year to focus 100% on my mission. But through that time, we launched the supplement company project, a father and son program. We launched a fitness program, but all kinds of just business growth over the last 5 years, really, really learning how to operate at a high level, build and deploy teams, understanding the marketing, high level strategies just to grow businesses. And so that was really my training ground for business development. And then last year, it's been a little over a year now, I launched my own coaching business calling the High Value Man Accelerator. And we're working specifically with men and getting them clarity and helping them really design a plan so they can practically and tactically achieve the goals that they want in their lifetime.
That's a good breakdown. I'm going to go back just a second to
Sure.
where 8 years ago you said you were interested in learning more about coaching and learning about how maybe have a mentor to guide you a little bit. Can you
Mm.
tell me how important that was through maybe a breakthrough of your own professional development?
Yeah, man. So I think I realized it came at a catalytic moment. So there was a couple of books that I read as I was stepping into just my business growth 7-8 years ago. Number one was Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Travis Bradberry. The other book was No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Glover. Those two books were just profound in my personal development. And they both leaned into this idea that I could learn a lot by time collapsing someone else's failures or successes. And so it opened my mind to realizing that what I learned through fitness coaching by having a fitness coach, I could learn skills. I could also do the same thing in my emotional development, my spiritual development, my business development. So I just got really hungry for finding coaches and mentors. And so during that season from, I'd say 8 years ago until now, I've invested heavily into personal development coaching, mentors, masterminds, experiences, and my growth has just been exponential every single year. But I've probably had the last 8 years, legit, probably 15 different coaches, part of a dozen different masterminds, all kinds of experiences. But it's the fastest, most effective way for you to get what you want.
All right, this is very key what you're saying. I want to personally thank you for telling me to read the book Think and Grow Rich.
Mm,
I read it. I finished it yesterday in 3 weeks because I
yeah.
couldn't put it down. And what
Yeah.
it did for me, and I know you read it multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
is it makes you think a belief system that's different and learning about the subconscious, learning about tactical ways of having that vision statement, and you read it every
Mm-hmm.
day, the
Yeah.
affirmation every single day, because once you believe it and have faith that it will come true, it'll
Mm.
come to pass if you take the right steps. So either
Truth.
talk about that book or just go dig a little bit deeper on the importance of that mindset, of the belief system for individuals.
Sure. Yeah, we're actually just finishing up Think and Go Rich in our men's program, and so we've having the guys read through that. But I've probably read that book half a dozen times. Foundationally, the book written in the early 1900s by Napoleon Hill, and it is fundamentally probably the basis for every personal development book that you're going to read in the last 50 years. The guy that wrote it, Napoleon Hill, he was hired specifically to interview at the time, like 200 or something like that, of the most successful entrepreneurs in the early 1900s. And so he spent 20 years of his lifetime aggregating information. And so it's one of the most effective ways to develop 100 years worth of personal development mindset and wealth building information. The book as a whole, it breaks it down into 13 chapters. I'd say probably the most powerful chapter is your chief definite aim. That is your primary main goal. It's an affirmation based statement of what you will achieve by when date. And so it's a vision statement. I, Aaron
Mhm.
Alejandrino, will achieve $100 million business within the next 10 years through varying amounts by deploying the High Value Man program and formula and serving 10,000 men on the mission to becoming the best versions of themselves. And so it becomes a statement that you incant and say, you read, you deploy, and you live by. And then the rest of the book just helps build a foundation and framework for you to think differently, to think wealthy, because our thoughts become things. That's the foundation for the book. What you think about shows up in your life. What you think about shows up in your life. I'll say it a third time. What you think about shows up in your life, either good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. You don't have anything in your life that you haven't previously thought about. And so if life's not going the way that you want, the first thing you need to do, recalibrate or change, are your thoughts.
Oh, 100%. I think, being a teacher for 20 years in public education, being a coach for multiple sports, I think the whole thing of mindset, belief system, visualization, they teach professional athletes all the way down, is key to being a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing that people don't realize is that they are their worst own enemy of how they talk to themselves. Can you
Sure.
touch on that point about self-talk maybe?
Yeah, man. I think that If you actually spoke out loud all the things you were thinking to yourself, and then put you out of the equation and then said it to your wife, your spouse, your kids, your team members, or anyone else, you'd realize that you would not keep you around. So some people have negative self-talk as just their primary go-to. And your words are powerful. Like, they really dictate everything. And so your internal self-dialogue is something that you need to be vigilant with. You need to make sure that you are managing like an enemy, or like a soldier at the gates, keeping the enemies away, because the truth of the matter is your thoughts will create everything in your life. And how you talk to yourself will be a reflection of how you talk to other people, how you view other people. So for the seasons when in my 20s, when I didn't trust men because of my upbringing, I couldn't trust men because they were going to lie, cheat, steal, take advantage, and manipulate. I couldn't trust men because I didn't have a good framework for not being able to trust men. I ended up creating relationships with men that I couldn't trust. And I would show up in those same ways. So just perpetuating the self-belief system that was completely unproductive and very negative. The same dynamic showed up in my relationships with women. And so if you don't realize that your thoughts create your things and things create your reality, you end up just living in prison. I think that's really what hell is. I don't think hell is somewhere in the afterlife where you're burning in this fiery mess. I think it's the life you create right now by not managing and stewarding the gifts that God gave you. God gave you the gift to think intelligently, to steward your body in such a way, to live in alignment. And so if you don't manage the gifts He gives you, how can you ever expect to step foot into heaven?
That's good, man. That's powerful. I think the one thing, just reflecting on what you said, is I think there's so many, not just men and women along, is that they never live a fulfilled life. And you talked a lot about the reasons why. So what's one simple thing that you could give them, everyone who's listening, that just to start them in the right direction to start living on purpose with the talents they have?
Decide what your life is going to look like. Write down a vision. Our step one process in the accelerator is a vision document. It's 15 questions. If anybody emails me and wants a copy of it, I'd be happy to send it to them. It's 15 questions I've been using for 8 years. It helps you get clear on your 2-year picture. Most people don't know what they're going to do tomorrow. Most people don't know what they're going to do next week, much less in 90 days or at the end of the year. If you don't create a roadmap, a blueprint, a game plan of what 2 years looks like, an ideal life in 2 years, it has to be attainable. It's got to fall into the framework of the SMART goals: specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound. But you need to define first what greatness looks like. If you don't, then you're going to spend your whole life wondering, hoping, wishing, and wanting for something that you haven't defined. Like, what Disneyland is going to look like when you set out to leave from your home, drive there. Like, what the gates look like. There's going to be a fee when you go through the door. You're going to see Mickey Mouse and Minnie. You're going to get an ice cream cone. The rides are going to go on. You have defined what a good day at Disneyland looks like because you can picture it in your mind. If you can't picture in your mind what you're working towards, what you're running towards, what you're moving towards, what life looks like down the road, the first obstacle you hit, the first challenge you hit, the first roadblock you hit is going to steer you completely off your goal. And then you're like, you know what? I don't deserve happiness. I don't deserve to get it. And so if you want to start somewhere, start with what you want down the road. I always say 2 years is a good place to start. It's further enough away that it allows you to imagine, and it's close enough that it allows you to get practical. If you can't, you need to start with 2 years before you can build out the 10-year, the 5, the 50-year, and all that, the lifetime vision. But 2 years is very practical and tactical. Then once you have an image of what you want, start with the want. It will tell you exactly the work that you need to do. Want, work, then that will derive your worth. Most people struggle with self-worth. They struggle with believing in themselves. They struggle with poor confidence, low self-esteem, poor identity. It's because they haven't done the work to prove their worth.
No, so no, Erin, I think 100% that's on target. So the thing about identity, I'm going to go on that word identity and worth. Where do you think, I'm going to 2-part question. I'll start real slow with this one. Where do you think people lose their identity? Is it from the beginning, the behaviors they see from others, or is it just living through life and they lose their identity?
So I can speak really only to my own experience on this. And I would say that from a child, from early upbringing until 5 or 6 years old, I had zero identity issues. I knew who I was. I was happy. I was energetic. I was enthusiastic. Like life was easy. And my mom will say that even though I experienced some trauma early on, 5, 6, 7 years old, I was a kid, right? And Jesus talks about this, the kingdom of heaven is given to the children. It's because they know who they are. They're authentic. They're not trying to fake it, right? And you get into the world, and if you don't have, I think good parental units is one area where you start to lose your identity, especially for a boy. A boy needs a father. And so without the intercession of a father figure in the developing years, 7, 8, 9, and 10, those are the developing years when a father really should step in and just start to intercede with his maturity and bring them into the world of man. The boy will start to seek his identity in the exterior. And my path was raised by a single mom. So my mom was my mom and my dad. She was the voice of my life. She taught me literally all of my framework. And a lot of it was good and a lot of it was completely wrong. Mom can't teach a boy to be a man. It's impossible. And so my 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, as I was learning to be a young man, I was learning how to do that from a woman. And so where did I seek my validation, my approval, my relationships? It was with women. And so that really steered me in a lot of directions that were not really where I should have gone. And so from the identity issues early on, it really begins in your relationship with your parents. People lose it, I believe, over time because they don't ever take time to ask themselves the deep, purposeful questions of who I am and who do I want to be. They don't build a relationship with self. So a young man will have identity issues if there's not the father intercession as he's stepping into his young adulthood. And that's why the two-parent household is so important. For a young man stepping into his teenage, adolescence, and his adulthood years, identity issues will typically come up. Again, if he doesn't have a good relationship with a father figure, a mentor, role model, all masculinity is modeled. So if he doesn't have that, he's going to have identity issues. And the second part of it is, because not all of us had that, if he doesn't do the deep work, if he doesn't get the therapy, the counseling, the coaching, and the mentoring, he's going to run through life with his childhood framework and mindset for life. And so he's going to be intersecting with other adults and their garbage and mess. And he's going to have identity issues. So he's going to try to latch on to something in the exterior, probably a relationship with a woman or some relationship with work. And he's going to attach his identity to doing rather than his being. And so, people lose their identity for any number of reasons. More than likely, it's because they didn't have a good upbringing. That's always the root of it. If you had a father figure in your household who knew who he was, he's going to teach his son who he will be. If you didn't have that, the reason you have identity issues growing up is because you don't do the work. You don't do the therapy, the counseling, the coaching, and mentoring. And you're believing that if I get this next thing, the next relationship, the next promotion, the next something else, that you're going to be that man. You're not going to be that man until you know who that man is.
Man, that's another solid point. I think a lot of kids that I work with and adults, and I go back to the roots of their family.
Yeah.
Like you go, are your parents still married? Question number one. Mm-hmm. If your parents got divorced, how much time did you spend with your father? And then the last question would be like, how was your relationship with your father? Mm-hmm. And if you say it's terrible, I didn't have a healthy one, then you know why, because it's already there. It's black and white. Right. That they never were coached, mentored, shown how to be a man. So that's very sound advice. One thing I want to touch on is, and this very much goes part of a good shepherd, is about your faith and how that plays an important role in your life.
Yeah, I'd say my walk with Christ is new. I'd say that I'm a very new Christian, about 1.5 years on that path. The faith has always been a big part of who I am. I previously checked the box as spiritual, not religious. And so I've always believed that there is a greater, higher power. I've always believed that this is really just a test, this meat suit that we're in. I've always believed that. I just didn't have the framework for Christianity like I do now. I spent a lot of my time trying to figure things out and learn a good model for masculinity. And the more that I've studied, the more that I just have spent time in the world, the more that I've looked to mentors and other men, I found that there's every guy is flawed. Every man is flawed. And when I'm looking for a perfection, a perfect model of masculinity, there's only one dude that has done it really well. And that was Jesus. And so the more that I've studied Christianity, it has just been such a really great framework for my faith and to give me the language and the words to help make faith a practical reality. But faith, more so than anything, John, it's a belief-based mindset. I believe that once you believe, you see. And so it's fundamental to my life, to my practice, and I'm excited to get even more disciplined in my devotion with Christ.
One thing that I would say, Erin, on that is your foundational belief system in Christ, rooted in Christ, what he has done as the Son of God on earth, and how much grace that God has given us to be saved really allows you to have peace. And the one thing I've learned in my life is that the closer I press into him through, like you said earlier, doing the work. Well, as a Christian, doing the work is reading the word, being around a strong group of men who read the word together, who hold each other accountable, who check their blind side to call them out if they're not being righteous and being sinful. And I think the more that I've learned to talk about my faith and try to gear or steer people into the right direction, because that's our ultimate goal. Besides our life mission that God's given us, our talents and treasures, our ultimate goal is to get to heaven and to be with him and God willing, all of our family members. But it's such an important piece in my life, I know in your life. And the question I'm going to ask you about faith that goes into that group is, how has your life been ever since you've been around a strong Christian men in the past maybe year or so?
Yeah, so I'd say the shift in my circle the last year that I have done very intentionally to move out to Texas, spend time with Christian-based men. It's been one of probably the most powerful growths in all of my areas: my faith, my fitness, my family, my finances. The conversations are just deeper, they're more impactful, and there's the foundation of principle over personality. A lot of the work that I was doing previously was very personality based and not having principles. It's very easy to get sucked into the world and to make gray decisions. And so the big shift has really just been in prioritizing the people I spend time with. But as a whole, it's a totally different conversation when you put God at the foundation of everything you're doing. And so I'd say that my personal development's increased, my fitness has increased, I'm taking on greater challenges, my finances have increased, my relationship with my lady has increased. Everything's just improved significantly, putting that as a basis. And I also can see a predictable runway for the path that I'm going to live. There's a great model here in Texas, Pastor Keith Craft, and he is the primary reason that we uplifted our family and moved from California to here. It's because what he's been able to create. He's got a template. He's got a really good template. Great marriage. He's got 3 kids that choose him. He's got his fitness and his faith and his finances dialed in, and he's got a men's movement. 300 men strong show up every single Saturday morning for the Mighty Men. And he's creating generational impact because he's chosen to put his personality and his principles in the right order and put God first. And so it was followable excellence. It was an obvious decision. So that's a big choice and the reason why we moved out.
Yeah. So, and I'm so happy for you because I'm just so thankful God's just poured out more blessings to you in making that decision to go out to Texas. And the thing is, you talked about that golden thread. You talked about how doing the work and your talents, and then now the spiritual connection when you feel like you're in alignment with God. How can you weave those two together? And then I think that's where you're at right now in your life. That's how I feel, is that you've hit this pinnacle where you feel like you're in the state of flow with your business, with your relationships and relationships with people here on earth, but also the relationship with Christ. Can you just talk a little bit about that for a second?
What I hear you say is drawing a connection between the talents and treasures God has given you, my golden thread analogy, and how faith is now coming together. Correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think ultimately God prepares you for your life's mission by giving you lots of opportunities to test your character and build your strength. And so I think over the last decade, as I've really been building the foundation of my coaching, building this curriculum and this teaching, understanding how to operate in the world. He's been positioning me, I think, strategically to help bring more people to the opportunity to really understand God, understand a relationship with a higher power. And so the calling that I feel in my life right now is to live in such a way that I can be used for when the opportunity presents itself. I've been well equipped. I've had a lot of worldly success in a lot of areas. I've got some legendary friendships and relationships that I've developed over the last 10 years. And I feel that God is just getting me ready for the next chapter. The next chapter, God willing, will be, marriage and kids and all that. But also I think that there's a mission to be able to pull the mission of bringing men together. We've been doing really well with our program, the High Value Man Accelerator. We've made it Christ-centered over the last 6 months, like really forward-facing. And I know that there's a calling on so many men's hearts to develop their own men's ministry. And I think I'm uniquely planted, having had the experience in launching the project and Squire Program and fitness coaching programs for men, helping coaches build their coaching programs. I think I'm uniquely called to be able to help kingdom-driven minded men develop their men's ministry with curriculum, with talents, with coaching, with formulas and blueprints so that they can take their message and turn it into their ministry.
That's beautiful, man. That's awesome. I'm blessed to have connected with you and everything you're doing. And the last question I really have is you turn 40 soon, right?
Yeah, man.
So I just turned 40 last year. And you have this fitness journey of running lately. And I did my 40-mile run on my 40th birthday. And I think you're doing something similar too as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, man. I've got a 40 before 40 list, 40 items that are across my faith, fitness, family, and finances, and 40 unique stretches that I've been working on for the last 100 days. Or it'll be 100 days by my birthday on September 21st. And then I've got a 40-mile run planned. We got probably about 15 people that have committed to doing it. There'll probably be a handful more that will come out for it. But yeah, it's an open invite. Anyone wants to come out, September 21st, Dallas, Texas, around White Rock Lake. We got a 10-mile loop, and we're just going to run in fellowship.
That's awesome, man. And the last thing you have fitness-wise is a 100-mile race at the end of the year. Is that right?
100-mile ultra marathon in Needles, Texas. I forget the name of it, DeBrazos, I think. But yeah, that'll be the first weekend in December. But yeah, that'll be a whole lot of fun. So the 40-miler is a good little prep to get ready for that.
Well, it's so funny because when I turned 40, I did my 40 miles. And then 2 months ago, I did my first 100-miler. And my biggest suggestion for you when you do your 100 miles is just like you know already probably is just break it down into segments, make sure your nutrition's good, and just you're strong enough to get through it. It's just the mind will play with you because it's such a long journey, but it goes quick. Trust me, especially if you're the right people.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to ask, and actually for you to tell everybody is, what's one strong message? You've given us such beautiful golden nuggets of all these golden threads to, high valued man and going away from the passive aggressive man and to live out your calling and fulfillment and purpose. What's one message that you would tell everybody is about not waiting? And that's what you said hell was, because I'm going to go back to what you said. You said hell is really not living out your mission. So dig deep down in there. And at the end, just tell us how everyone can reach you, because you're doing powerful things, man.
Yeah, man. Well, I'd say there's I think an impact statement that I like to leave as many people with as possible. It's be the change. And be the change. If you see something that needs to be changed, be that example, be that leader, be that lighthouse, be the change, be the change. The world needs more change makers. The world needs more leaders and lighthouses. It doesn't need more people pointing out what's not working, what's not right, the injustice. Just be the change. Be the change in private and on public. Be the change on your social media reel. Be the same guy when you show up Sunday morning in church. Be the same guy Saturday night when you go out with drinks or we go out to dinner with the family. Be that same person and be the change consistently everywhere. That would be what I would say to everyone, because the world's not going to be any different until you become different. And the timeline is we don't know how long we're going to get. None of us, right? And so if you think that someday down the road, tomorrow, next week, after your 40th, in 5 years, 1 year, after you get the promotion, the job, you make the money, that somehow that's going to be the catalytic moment that you're going to be that person that you say you're going to be, it's never going to happen. and you're making excuses, and you're actually wasting time. You're not only wasting your time, but you're wasting precious time that you could be stewarding other people to their own success and greatness and being the example for others. You're wasting their time. And if you're wasting your time, you're wasting their time, you're actually killing people, because the butterfly effect of you being the example that is so needed means that you get to intercept people as they need you. And so if you don't do it right now, like people are dying. And that's the framework for looking at it. People are literally, their suicide rates are through the roof. Think about the depression, anxiety, frustration, irritation, the broken homes. How many kids are growing up without fathers, models, mentors? How many young girls are going through their own abuse, physical, mental, emotional, or sexual, simply because one person didn't decide to step in the gap and be the change? And so be the change and do it right now. Do it right now, and do it vigilantly, and do it for the rest of your life. You do that consistently every single day. You go to bed exhausted every single night because you gave all you had in your faith, your fitness, your family, your finances. You go live that way. Heaven is there. That's fulfillment. Like, that's real fulfillment. And you live anywhere less than that, and that's hell. You have this aching knowing that you didn't do enough because you chose not to do enough.
Yeah, dude, that's by far the best summary of how to live your life with purpose. And I couldn't agree with you more of how to get there. So tell everybody how to contact you, and I'll put everything in the show notes. Best way.
Yeah, man. Website, AaronAlejandrino.com. You can hop in, join the email list, send out a couple broadcasts throughout the week. And then on the Instagram, the Fit Beard would probably be the easiest way, pretty active on that channel. But yeah, would love for anybody of your followers to reach out if they want to connect. I'm happy to send you that vision document, those 15 questions, or if they want to come and join the 40 before 40 list, just shoot me an email or a DM. I'd love to connect with y'all.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Aaron. I want everyone to hear this very clearly. Aaron is a man of his word. He is, and as he said throughout this whole podcast, is just, he's true to his identity. He's learned from great other people, masterminds, Keith Craft. He's around a great group of men, spiritual leaders, and he has success always leaves clues. So Aaron basically told everyone how to be successful and live on purpose with fulfillment. So go back, re-listen to this one many times, because he had so many golden nuggets, especially that golden thread of using your talents to live with purpose. So Aaron, I'm blessed that you were on today on The Classroom, and I wish you nothing but the best going forward in your life's mission to one day be a father, to be that husband, and to just continue to live out your purpose.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you.
Thank you. And this class is dismissed.